Welcome back to a very special, spooky Ty and That Guy. I'm Wes Chatham. This is my good friend, my good pal, sometimes lover, Timothy Franck.
Yeah, I am a big fan of spooky, so doing a spooky episode is exactly what I come here for.
Yeah, see, people that listen to this show, all 8 of you, the people that are diehard fans, super diehard fans, they know that Ty and I are fans of the night, and we really enjoy spooky, scary, movies. And so we decided, since it's Halloween this week, that we're going to do something special, and we're going to do our top 5 movies that take place during Halloween. I know it's a complicated list, but thank God we don't got Wet Blanket Clint here to get on our list. But I want to save the top 5 slasher movies, top 5 ghost movies, top 5 alien movies. I want to save all those for other shows that we do. And since it's Halloween, this is a way to connect the movies to Halloween. And I think a movie that I really want to start with, so we can take a little time with it, is a movie that's one of my favorites, and I know it's one of Ty's favorites. And it is the original Halloween, the John Carpenter Halloween, the start of it all the slasher movies. I mean, some would argue, and I was going to ask you this, would you say that Psycho was the first slasher movie of that genre, or would you say it was Halloween?
So, I mean, that's a good question. There's a lot of online debate about, is Psycho the first slasher film? And I think there is an argument to be made that it is. It certainly shares a lot of the same elements as modern slasher films. A knife-wielding murderer that specifically targets young women, that there is some mystery about who the murderer is. They do a misdirect with, making you think, like the first Friday the 13th, you think this kid, Jason, has come back and is murdering people, and it turns out it's Jason's mom, right? There's that misdirect element to it. By the way, spoiler alert for a 40-year-old slasher film. I've never seen the first Friday the 13th, it was his mom that did it. That's a flip on this version where, we think it's the mom, and it turns out, it's him dressing up as the mom. So there's a lot of elements that are very similar. So it's a low body count. He starts out, he kills the main girl, Janet Leigh, I think that's her name, in the shower. And then he kills, I think he kills a cop. He shoves him down the stairs. It's a pretty low body count for a modern slasher film. But I think there's enough shared elements that an argument can be made that it was the first slasher film, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Well, there's a lot of firsts in this movie, even if it wasn't the first slasher film. And I could be wrong, but I think this is the first film where that darkness comes to the suburbs, right? And one of the things that really struck me, and I could be wrong, I mean, I guess, and we can discuss that in terms of slasher films, but when was The Last House on the Left? When was that?
Oh, that was in the 70s, I believe. Early 70s.
Before this one?
Before Halloween?
Yeah, Halloween was 78.
That's a good question.
72.
Yeah, it is. It was, thank you. It was before Halloween. I remember it being a lot older, but I would say that Last House on the Left does not qualify as a slasher film. Last House on the Left is a very sort of, it's the granddaddy of the female revenge films. Right? Mm-hmm. It's the woman who gets assaulted, left for dead, goes back and kills all of her attackers. And we've had a ton of those movies since then. I think Last House on the Left is the first one I think of in that genre. I think Last House on the Left has a lot more in common with Kill Bill than it does with Halloween.
I think Halloween has a lot in common with Cormac McCarthy's No Country for Old Men. Because,
really?
Yeah. I think, because Javier Bardem's character is this personification of evil that is unstoppable and unmovable. And Halloween was probably the first slasher movie I saw. And what really struck me was it because it was before I saw Jason. It was before I saw any type of movie like this. But it was this unmovable force that was coming, and there was nothing you could do about it. And, the fact that it took place in this Americana, bucolic suburbs neighborhood was that even when you feel safe, even this place that is warm and in these nice families or whatever, there's this outside force that is coming, and there's nothing you can do about it. That felt the same thing with No Country for Old Men. You know, Tommy Lee Jones does not understand this new world. There's an enemy that's coming that is unstoppable, that he doesn't know, he doesn't understand anymore.
It's interesting that you put it that way. I'm thinking about it as you're saying it. I think these movies, the thing that they all have in common, and I'm going to mention another movie that this made me think of in a minute, is our feeling of helplessness when confronted by what we think of as pure evil, but it's detachment from social norms. When somebody doesn't give a fuck about the agreed social norms, when they'll do anything at a moment's notice, we're terrified of that.
Mm-hmm.
That's inherently frightening, because at any moment they may pull out a gun and shoot you. They might, steal your car. They might blow up your house. You don't know, because they're detached from social norms, and that gives them an enormous amount of freedom and an enormous amount of power. And it's very terrifying. And the thing that I'm thinking of as I'm saying that is the character of the Terminator. You know, when Reese says he doesn't care, he'll wade through you, he'll reach down her throat, he'll pull her heart out, because he's this machine designed to kill. Well, in that case, there's a reason for it. He's a machine designed to kill, so he doesn't care about human stuff. So we can kind of justify it, and in a way, it makes it less scary, because a machine designed to kill is in a way less scary than a human who acts like a machine designed to kill, even though it should have all the same human feelings we have. That's very frightening, that detachment from normal humans' norms.
It's also frightening, even if they're not hurting even if somebody is completely free of social norms. I mean, that's why, the social pressure to kind of fit back in or to whatever, I don't know what it is about John Carpenter. I mean, he makes great movies. That's the one. But what is it about him and this style of movie making? Because I love all of his films. Some of his films, like this one.
I do not love all of his films.
Which ones do you not like?
Ghosts of Mars is a legitimately terrible movie.
I never saw that movie.
Yeah, it'll ruin your feelings about John Carpenter.
Is Val Kilmer in that movie?
No.
No. I never saw that.
It's Pam Grier and I can't remember anybody else who was in it.
Natasha Henderson, or I forget how to say her name.
Yeah.
But when I watch Halloween, I try to watch it and imagine it without the influence of Halloween. So everything from there was a bunch of sequels that came after Halloween. Then there was the Jasons, and there was the whole, slasher movies that came. But this movie has way more craft, and it's way more skill what John Carpenter does with this movie that really just resonates. It's the most successful independent movie ever.
Yeah.
They made it for $300,000, and it is a movie every Halloween that gets that play. John Carpenter is from New York, but he grew up in Kentucky. And he said that the first time he really saw evil was when he saw like racism in the South. And he saw some of the horrible things that were done to people. And that really shook him up. And he's kind of carried that with him. And then also when he was in college, they toured a psych ward. And when he was walking the psych ward, he saw this young kid who was, disturbed. And he said he looked into his eyes, and it's kind of like the speech that Michael Myers' doctor gives, where I looked in the eyes and saw darkness, and I saw pure evil in that thing. And so when he came back, he always carried that with him. And then I'm drawing a blank on the producer's name, but the guy that was like, "Hey, I got this idea about babysitter killers. I think it'd be great." And so John Carpenter and his wife at the time, they incorporated all of these things to create Mike Myers and to do it on Halloween.
And there is something to that, being able to look at somebody and go, oh, there's something in our hindbrain, in the lizard part of our brain, that recognizes danger. And you see certain people, you look in their eyes and you go, oh, that's a bad person. That person is capable of harming me. And it just sends a chill up your spine. So Daniel Abraham, my writing partner, his wife was an occupational therapist for many years. And one of the groups that she worked with, one of the communities she worked with as an occupational therapist, was prisoners coming from the state penitentiary in New Mexico. So if somebody got really hurt in the state penitentiary, and it was specifically an area that she was a therapist for, she would work with that population. And she told us a story about a time, and she worked with all kinds of prisoners, people who had been rapists and murderers and all kinds of things. And she said she always treated him with the respect. They always treated her with respect. Everybody understood the relationship. I'm your healthcare worker. I'm here to help you. They understood that. So she never had any problems. But she said one time she had a guy come in. He had busted up his hand. He had attacked somebody and busted up his hand. And she was talking to him, and she said she looked up into his eyes, and he was smiling. He was being charming. He wasn't doing anything wrong. She looked up into his eyes, and she just had this thing shoot down her back, and she said, I need to step out for a minute. She went out. She found the nearest cop. She said, search that room, make sure every sharp that was in there is still in there, and went to her supervisor and said, I can't work with this guy. And there were just something. She had worked with dozens or hundreds of prisoners. She looked in this guy's eyes, and she's like, oh, this guy will kill me. This is a bad, bad man.
That is interesting.
Yeah. And I think there is something. And I think we have a sort of primordial fear of that kind of person. And that was the genius of Mike Myers, is he's the living embodiment of that. He's the living embodiment of, he doesn't give a fuck about your society. He doesn't give a fuck about your rules. He just wants to get his murder on. And there's nothing you can do about it. You can't talk him out of it.
That reminds me of a similar story, and it reminded me of you telling it. So one of my good friends, Tim Clemente, he's retired FBI. He's one of those guys, he's like the Dos Equis commercial, one of the most interesting men. The things that he's done. He did a lot of work in Iraq during the war. He was in Afghanistan.
You worked with this guy on the unit, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
He was the writer on the unit. We became good friends. And so I always talk to him, with that, that many years in the FBI. His brother's also retired FBI. The experiences that they've had, there's so many fascinating stories. And his brother was one of the most prominent serial killer profilers. Really, really smart guy. But anyway, I was talking to Timmy. We were talking about stories and everything. And I said, and he's a tough, old school, macho, guy. And I said to him, has anybody ever scared you? And he stopped. And he said, there was one time where I've never been scared like this. And he's like, I've been here. I've met, I've done hundreds of interrogations and everything. But there was a guy that was a hitman for the cartel. They captured him in Miami, and they were questioning him, to get information about the cartel or something along those lines. I don't remember the specifics around it, but the cartel had his family, so he wasn't going to say anything. And so Timmy was in there, and they were having a conversation with him, an interrogation, and he said, the guy looked at me, and I looked in his eyes. My stomach dropped, and he said, there was a chill that went through me that was almost uncontrollable. I literally had to leave the room. And he said, it shook me. He said, and I realized that I saw pure evil for the first time in my life. And so this goes to that point, is that this is a movie about that evil, about that thing that's coming, and it's unstoppable.
And I think what makes it even more terrifying, so like a hitman for the cartel, I understand why he's doing what he's doing. He works for the cartel. They pay him. Maybe they have his family that they're using as leverage on him or whatever. But like he doesn't just show up to a house and murder 7 people for no reason, right? If he murders you, it's because the cartel wants you dead. Whereas with Michael Myers, you'll never understand the reason.
But here's the thing. What if he was already a killer and then somebody just paid him?
Sure, but he still operates within the boundaries of a structure, right? He has a boss. He has people who pay him to do things. It's horrible and it's evil, but we kind of understand it. Whereas with Michael Myers, there's no reason for doing the things that he does. He just does them.
Do you think if Amos Burton didn't meet Lydia and and things went kind of the wrong way when he was growing up, do you think he could have his own slasher movie?
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think, you've read The Churn, obviously. And I think the story we're telling in The Churn is Amos reaching this crossroads. And if he goes left, he becomes one of those guys, right? The dead-eyed killer. Who knows what he would be doing.
Right.
And if he goes right, he becomes what he eventually does become actually in this story. And I think Lydia is the underpinning of that crossroad. She shows him a path to go to the right. But I think he's definitely a guy. He could have gone left and he would just be a psycho killer. Right?
I'd like to see that story of him going left and how that ends up.
We kind of a little bit allude to it in The Churn, where when Lydia says, you shouldn't kill your friend because that's not the kind of thing people should do. And Amos goes, oh yeah, I probably shouldn't kill my friend. and then just goes to where the guys who are trying to get him to kill his friend, where they are, and just murders all of them.
Yeah.
Like doesn't even, no question, no thinking about it, no plan, just shows up there, murders everybody in the building, sets the building on fire, and leaves.
It's one of my favorite murder scenes in written form because it's so clumsy and violent and raw and harsh. It's a lot like of what it would really be like if this guy comes in and starts killing these people. There's no polish to it. This is not John Wick.
No.
This is not, this is a guy that they're clawing eyes out and he's improvising whatever he has and he's just hitting and he's getting hurt. It's
he gets fucked up.
Yeah, he gets fucked up. And there's something that adds to the drama when you realize that he's human. That it can, like if you watch John Wick or you watch these people and, they're invincible. But if somebody's going there and they're really getting hurt and they might not make it out of it, there's the stakes are higher. But you're a big Carpenter fan, right? John Carpenter fan.
I am. Yeah, and I think some of his best work is on the list of some of my favorite movies.
Mm-hmm.
I think he's got a few that are just okay, and then he's got a couple of real duds. There's a lot of reasons why that might be. Some of the movies that I think are not his best movies happened very late in his career.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe, and I know I've heard from a number of people who work in the industry, and I actually know some people who have met John Carpenter and worked with him on stuff. He really struggled with the studio system.
Yeah.
He had a lot of early success.
These movies that really flourished were he had complete control. Halloween was $300,000, but he had final cut. His name was above the title. He got to cast who he wanted. Him and his wife wrote the script. But the only movie I think I saw that I didn't like was Escape from L.A.
I also don't like Escape from L.A. And again, I don't know what the level of studio interference he got on that movie. Mm-hmm. I don't know. I think he really, where John Carpenter really shines is low budget indie films where he has a ton of control and he gets to make the story he wants to make.
Mm-hmm.
And every time he tried to push his way up into more, traditional studio, bigger budget movies, I don't know if he just doesn't like working in that environment or there's something about the way they try to manipulate him or his story to fit the studio mold. But it seems like every time he tried to do that, it was not his best work.
I mean, The Thing was probably one of the biggest budget movies that he did, and that's a masterpiece.
It is.
I get what you're saying, though. When he's running and gunning, with like Halloween, they got to shoot this movie in 20 days. It's $300,000, and he's doing all the score and everything. And one of the things that I like, I think probably what I love about his movies is that they're about, like, let's go to the movies and have a good time. And they got these great ideas with these great characters, and they're not precious about everything. You see Escape from New York. It's this crazy sci-fi movie where they're in New York. And nothing's polished, nothing's overproduced, and it's just gritty and it's raw, and those are a lot of fun to see.
Now, I would say you mentioned The Thing. That's a data point we should include because, yes, he did get a fairly decent budget for The Thing. And yes, I believe he did get a fair amount of control. He got to make the movie he wanted to make, and it was a flop.
Yeah.
And I think he got some studio backlash to that affected his later career. I think the fact that The Thing flopped hurt him in a number of ways. And now, of course, looking back on it, we all know that it's insane that it flopped. It was maybe one of the best movies of that year. As you said, it's a fucking masterpiece.
Yeah.
And we still, to this day, we still watch that movie. We still talk about it as one of the best sci-fi horror movies ever made. So he was proven right in the long run. But I think in the short term, it did some damage to his career.
Yeah, it's hard for me to believe that movie flopped. It was one of those things that I never even heard about. I remember I was staying at my dad's house, and it was on, and my dad was like, "Oh, you got to watch this movie. It's called The Thing," and they're stuck out there. And I watched that movie.
There are some things I know. We both had troubled relationships with our fathers, but there are some things about your father that I wish my father had.
Oh,
my father never tried to get me to watch The Thing with him. Man, that would have been awesome.
Oh yeah. Now, one thing about my dad is he had great taste in movies, and that's one thing that we shared was a love of movies. And a lot of my favorite movies he introduced me to. One thing my dad introduced me to was Carpenter and Kurt Russell's Elvis movie, the first thing they did together. And
right.
that is one of the better Elvis movies out there. And Kurt Russell was one of the better Elvises. He doesn't look like Elvis Presley, obviously, but he embodied him and captured his essence in a way that I haven't seen any other actor do.
I'll tell you what Kurt Russell has that you have to have if you're going to play Elvis.
Yeah.
He's got his swagger.
Yeah.
He's got Elvis's swagger.
Right.
Nobody can swagger like Kurt Russell can swagger, right? He walks into a room, he's just the biggest dick in that room. Everybody knows it.
Yeah.
Like, he's just got that feel to him. You watch movies like Big Trouble in Little China. He is so certain that he's the hero of that story all the way through. And like, he's not the hero of that story, right? He's kind of a bumbling guy through the whole thing, but he is so sure he's the hero of that story. And it just oozes off of him in every frame.
You know, what's interesting is that the way that Halloween was rolled out at the time, it opened in Kansas, and that's the only place that it was playing. And then they slowly use that momentum and go to the next town and the next city, and they kind of go through. So by the time Halloween really became a full force hit, Carpenter was on the set of the Kurt Russell Elvis movie, and he thought he shot this little movie and was going to forget about it. And then all of a sudden, the whirlwind of the popularity of this movie hit him when he was on set. And that's when he started getting some swings at the bat, like The Thing. But that's, if anybody listening has not seen the John Carpenter Kurt Russell Elvis movie, it's phenomenal. And Kurt Russell is really good as Elvis Presley in the movie. Also, too, Jamie Lee Curtis in the movie. I don't think, and also, you know, this movie was before I was born, but going back and watching some of the slasher movies and kind of seeing it, I don't think there was a character as competent as her or as strong as her in the movies. Like, she fights back, and she fights back hard in Halloween.
She gave birth to a million tropes. The
virgin.
The virgin who survives. The trope of the final girl, right? That the monster gets to kill everybody, but there will be one final girl who will find a way to defeat him.
Yeah.
She is, you know, like Helen of Troy is the face that launched 1,000 ships. Jamie Lee Curtis is the face that launched 1,000 horror movie tropes.
Right.
I still see them today. I was just watching a horror movie like 2 nights ago, and I'm like, oh, there's the Jamie Lee Curtis character. There she goes.
Movie?
I was trying to remember. It was a kind of forgettable film. It wasn't very good. Mm-hmm. Probably shouldn't mention it by name. I don't want to piss anybody off. But it was that. Like, I'm watching it, goes, oh, she's the Jamie Lee Curtis character.
Yeah.
And you know, like and she's doing all the Jamie Lee Curtis things. She's being competent. She's fighting back hard. You know, like that whole thing.
One of the things that I think elevates Halloween is you have Dr. Loomis, who comes in and explains his experience with Mike Myers. In that speech, when he talks about staring into the pit, the dark pit of his eyes and seeing true evil, it's kind of like the story you told at the beginning of the podcast when Daniel's wife. Do you think Daniel's wife thinks that when? Do you think Daniel's wife, when you come over to write, that she looks down in the dark pit of your eyes and says the same thing when you leave to Daniel about you?
Maybe.
But, you know, Donald Pleasance, who played Dr. Loomis, you know, the thing is like, this has become such a major part of his life. And it's, you know, think about the residuals. I mean, every Halloween, that movie happens over and over again. But these are the list of people that turn this part down. This is how crazy this business is. He was the guy that said, yeah, and basically this movie's, you know, paying him for the rest of his life. So these are the list of the people that turned it down. This is the people they first went to. Christopher Lee, Peter Cushing, John Belushi, which is interesting, Lloyd Bridges, Mel Brooks, Yul Brynner, David Carradine, Kirk Douglas, Dennis Hopper, Chris Christopherson, Walter Matthau, Peter O'Toole, and Lawrence Turney. So, is there any...
Now I really want to see the Mel Brooks version of that movie.
I know. What? It sounds like they were just casting a wide net. But some of these guys would be interesting. But John Belushi, I don't understand that.
There is a long history of comedic actors, when they finally get like a serious part, turn out to be really great. Like
Robert Williams in Good Will Hunting?
Yeah.
Winning an Oscar. But I think John Belushi could be great, but if I saw him in this, it would immediately take me out. Like, I would immediately be looking for the joke, looking for the laugh.
Yeah.
You know, but good for you, Donald Pleasance, because I think he's been in 4 of them, 4 of the movies.
Yeah, I bet he's got a very nice house somewhere that was mostly paid for with Halloween money.
By Halloween.
Yeah.
And you know what's interesting is that like Jamie Lee Curtis does not like horror movies. And John Carpenter did not want to be he wanted to be a David Lean or a Howard Hawks. He did not want to be a horror guy.
Yeah.
And so this movie was really made. They were thinking about how are we going to make something commercial, make money. And there's this thing, and there's this, that's kind of taboo in Hollywood that, there's a thing with writers or people, they sit down and they say, okay, what does the market want or whatever? And immediately people just shut down and be like, this is a bullshit way to tell stories, bullshit way to write, which I agree with that. Because you should tell stories that move you, that are interesting to you, and that and maybe somebody else will feel the same way. But this is something where they just did this crazy idea, and it worked. Nobody on that set, John Carpenter, Jamie Lee Curtis, all the crew members, nobody knew that they were making a movie that we would be talking about 4 years later.
Yeah. And
that's got to be a wild ride. I mean, I've done horror movies before, where you show up and you do them, and it's fun. I happen to be a fan of horror, so I'm more excited about it than probably most people. But to show up on a low budget movie like this when you're hanging out with your friends and you're making this movie, and the fact that it became this thing where you see it every Halloween for your whole life, for 40 years, they're still talking about it. They're still doing interviews. They're doing remakes of it. That's got to be mind-blowing. It was Jamie Lee Curtis's first movie, her first movie that she's did. That's got to play tricks on you. What separates Halloween? Because Friday the 13th, I saw that. I saw, all the slasher movies. There's something about Halloween that's so much better, head and shoulders better than these other movies. What do you think it is?
It's because the characters in Halloween seem like people. Jamie Lee Curtis seems like a real person, right? So when this horrible thing, Michael Myers shows up and starts murdering people, it feels like people that you might have known were being killed.
Yeah.
The Friday the 13th films, now the first one is a little different. The first one has a little bit more going for it. Has some better performances in it. I mean, it's an early performance from Kevin Bacon. It's a little more interesting in the way it's handled. But once the second one showed up and Jason shows up, everybody just becomes a caricature. It's like, oh, we're the teenagers who have sex and smoke pot, therefore we will all be killed. I'm the monster that kills people. And people don't watch Friday the 13th for the plot. They don't watch it because it's going to tell an interesting story ever. They watch it for the creativeness of the kills.
See, and that's when it loses me. When it's just about the creativeness of the kills, I start to, slasher horror is not my favorite horror avenue. Yeah. But the ones that I like, I love. And Halloween is one of those. I also think I like the lower death count in the original Halloween. It has more impact. And Siskel and Ebert gave a review on the original Halloween, and they both liked the movie. They gave it 2 thumbs up, and they said this slasher movie stands out because this is a slasher movie that likes and respects women.
Well, and that's the thing is it was able to give the characters time to feel like real people before they died. Mm-hmm. And I think that's why it was different. I think that's why it feels like a different thing. And to this day, I think that horror movies with a relatively low body count tend to be the better horror movies because they're the ones that give you a moment to get to know the character, to fall in love with them a little bit before whatever horrible thing shows up to kill them. I mean, have you ever seen it's a Korean film, Host? It's about a monster living in the sewers in Korea.
No, I know the movie. I haven't seen it.
Okay. That whole movie is about just one family trying to save one little girl from this monster. And I think it's very effective. Oh, okay. I'm going to mention one of my favorite horror movies right now because I actually just watched the first half of this yesterday because I saw it was on. I saw it was available on Shudder. Have you ever seen a movie called Jugface?
I have not. It sounds very familiar. Let me go ahead.
So one of the reasons I love Jugface for a variety of reasons. I think it's incredibly creative. I think it's super creepy. All of that. Jugface is a classic horror film in which I don't think anybody actually gets killed. Oh no, maybe the brother gets killed. Like very few or no people get killed in Jugface. But it's creepy and unsettling.
Wait,
and
what is this? I'm looking at it now. I've never even heard of this. Is it an Italian film?
No, it was a small budget indie U.S. film I saw it when it first came out, and I think I was like the only person that saw it.
Oh, I can't wait to see it.
In fact, I think so few people saw Jugface that I went on Twitter at one point and said, I love this movie, Jugface. It's super creative. One of my favorite horror movies I've seen this year. And the director of it replied to me. I didn't tag him. He apparently was just searching Twitter for the people talking about Jugface.
And he's like, thank God somebody's talking about my movie.
He was very nice. He was very nice. He was very, very grateful for the praise.
So it's something new and fresh. Jugface?
It's very fresh, I think. It's very different. But again, my point is, it's a movie with a very low body count.
Yeah.
But because it has such a low body count, you're allowed to develop some dread. Because the minute somebody's killed, all the dread goes away. Dread is the fear of impending death. Dread is not somebody already has been killed, right? So it's when you're being stalked through the house, that's dread. When somebody's following the characters, that's dread, right? Mm-hmm. The knife going into the chest, that's not dread anymore. That's horror now, but it's not dread. Mm-hmm. And the thing that Jugface really managed, I think, masterfully was this creeping sense of dread that just hangs over everything. Everything that happens in that movie just has this like cloud of dread over it. Mm-hmm. And I thought it was fucking great. Great movie. Not a slasher film, though.
Right. And I'm a bigger fan. I like dread. I like mystery. I like suspense. I like all of that in my horror. And when it just relies on the kill, I start to lose interest. Yeah. Even though there's some straight up kill movies that are fun, that I enjoy, but they're not going to be in my top 5, which brings us to our Halloween special top 5. And this is a long, convoluted list, but I was thinking to keep it specific to Halloween. All of these movies take place on Halloween. I mean, Halloween is in the movie. It could be on or Halloween happens in the movie. So the first movie on the list is Tales of Halloween. Have you seen this?
Yeah, I have.
You have? The Changeling, May, Night of the Demons.
I love May, by the way. I'm glad you picked that one.
That's not a really well-known one.
No, it's not.
Yeah. Night of the Demons, the 80s version, not the remake. Pet Sematary 1 and 2. The Exorcist, Sinister, Trick or Treat. Now, there's 2 Trick or Treats. Isn't there a Trick or Treat where there's like a rock and roll thing where the rock and roll guy comes back? It's like there's like
that sounds really familiar, like a late 80s film.
Yeah, it's like a late 80s film.
Yeah.
The guy on Family Ties, like the guy on Family Ties in it, but it was like a rock and roll guy comes back because they play the record backwards and he starts killing people.
Yeah.
Trick or Treat from 1986. I think that might be the one you're thinking of.
Okay.
Yeah. Now the one you're talking about, Trick or Treat, is the one with just the R.
Yeah.
Which, by the way, I thought that was a really good Halloween themed movie. I liked Trick or Treat a lot.
The one with there's like a bus incident with the kids.
Well, it's the one with the super creepy little kid.
Yeah. House 2, which are there any House 2 fans out there? I loved House 2.
House 2 is the one where they travel through time, right?
It's the one where they travel, like they find out. Well, yeah, he does because he travels back to Vietnam.
Yeah. That's the one I was thinking of. Yeah.
They realize like their great grandfather comes back to life, and he's like a corpse cowboy. And then they realize that the house has been built on a Mayan tomb, and they got to go get the skull, the crystal skull. That's a fun movie. I used to love that movie. 31, Poltergeist, one of my all-time favorites. Ernest Scared Stupid. Joseph made sure we had that on the list. A little known movie that I like a lot called Lady in White. Did you ever see that movie, Ty?
I have seen Lady in White, or at least that title is super familiar to me.
It might not age as well as when I first watched it, but I used to love this movie. It's a great ghost story.
God, why does that sound so familiar to me?
It's about this famous author that goes back to this little town. When he goes back to this little town, he visits a grave, and he has a flashback. And on Halloween, he got locked in a cloak room. These bully kids locked him in a cloak room. So he was like stuck in this room through the whole night.
Right.
And in the night, he met this little girl, and who turns out that he later finds out that's a ghost. And she was strangled by a killer in the town.
Maybe I haven't seen this because the title sounds really familiar, but the description you're giving me does not sound familiar.
And it's a pedophile killer out loose in this town, and his only link to it is the ghost, is the little girl ghost. It's a really fun story. Really fun story. Sleepy Hollow, Monster in the House, Murder Party. Did you ever see that one?
I have. Yep. I actually just saw that like a week or two ago.
And The Nightmare Before Christmas. Am I leaving any out?
I feel like you are, and I'm sitting here racking my brain trying to remember, because that whole thing of the bad guy is able to move around openly because it's Halloween. Mm-hmm. I feel like that trope got used a lot. But it also got used in TV a lot. Like every Buffy episode that took place on Halloween used that trope of, the vampires can walk around openly because everybody just thinks they're people in makeup. So maybe that's what I'm thinking of is all those TV times that it's been used.
And if I wanted to like talk about movies that scared me the most, it would have to be The Exorcist. When I saw The Exorcist for the first time, it would have to be The Changeling. That movie scared the shit out of me. You know what? The Sixth Sense scared me the first time I saw it.
It definitely has some creepy moments.
Ghosts get me. Because like I feel like a killer, or a slasher, there's things that you could do. Right. But Ghost, that's why Nightmare on Elm Street freaked me out so much. Because it comes in your dream. Like when things come where you can't defend yourself and they, Candyman scared the shit out of me. I remember seeing that. And did you go see Candyman in the theater?
The first one or the remake?
The first one.
I don't think I did see it in the theater. I think I watched it when it came out on video.
Woo, that was quite a viewing experience. So for our list, I'm going to say that I think Exorcist has to be number one.
I think Exorcist is one of the best horror films ever made. So yeah.
And then I think Halloween's number two.
Now, do you go with Halloween 1 or do you go with Halloween 3, Season of the Witch? I think there's an argument to be made for both of them.
Best jingle ever.
In my world, there only Halloween 1 exists, and then those new movies that just came out. I agree with Danny McBride and what's the director's name? Joseph, you know?
The most recent ones?
Yeah.
David Gordon Green?
David Gordon Green.
Oh, David Gordon Green, yeah.
So
yeah.
Danny McBride and David Gordon Green movies, the last two and one's about to come out. We haven't seen it, but the one that came out last year. Yeah. I'm a big fan of those, and I agree with their philosophy that Halloween 1 was a masterpiece. It kicked off this slasher thing, but we're going to forget about those other movies and just start as if that was the last movie.
Yeah.
And John Carpenter was involved with that. So are you a fan of Halloween 3, The Season of the Witch?
I am. I'm an unapologetic fan of Halloween 3, Season of the Witch. And I know it's everybody's least favorite Halloween movie, but hear me out on this. So when they wanted to make sequels to Halloween, John Carpenter wasn't particularly interested in making sequels to Halloween. He didn't want to make Mike Myers shows up and murders people over and over and over again. He didn't think that was an interesting story to tell. He felt like that story had been told. His idea was, instead of doing Mike Myers over and over again, let's make Halloween into a series like an anthology. Like every year a new Halloween movie comes out, and it's about a different horror thing that happens on Halloween. So Halloween 3, Season of the Witch was supposed to be the first of those. It was supposed to be the first of Halloween branded films that were not about Mike Myers, right? And I think that's I think John Carpenter was right. I think Mike Myers over and over again is boring. So I like the idea of it.
I do too.
And it's so fucking weird. And you know me. We've talked movies enough that if something's just really weird and I've never seen anything like it before, I have this instinctive need to like it. That like just because they did something crazy, I kind of feel like I should like that.
Support it. Yeah,
support it. Yeah,
I agree.
And Halloween 3 is fucking bananas. It is a mask company using pieces of Stonehenge creates a microchip that when a certain jingle is played, or just pull up the jingle. The jingle.
4 days to Halloween, Halloween, Halloween.
I like that idea. Like having a new movie come out every Halloween, but it's new and fresh and original. I'm an anthology guy. I mean, I love The Twilight Zone. But I agree with you, Ty. I got bored with Jason. I got bored with I don't think I've seen past I think like Jason Goes to New York, I think was like the last Jason thing I saw. So I just checked out of the whole Mike Myers. But when they reinvented it, and then I went back and watched the original movie, and then I was like, I'm on board with this reinvention.
Well, so the reinvention, you're talking about the one that came out a couple of years ago with Jamie Lee Curtis again.
Yeah.
David Gordon Green, I think, is a good director, but they also found a way they found an interesting story to tell. Right. And you and I are both into stories. So if it's just like guy you've heard of before murders more people, that's not a sales pitch I'm going to buy. But, girl who saw this guy murder a bunch of people is traumatized by it and is trying to find a way to rebuild her life by trying to get revenge. That's an interesting story. Like now we've got a story to tell. And yeah, Michael Myers is still in it and he's trying to murder people and stuff. That element is there, but it's not the point. It's not the point of the story. The point of the story is Jamie Lee Curtis dealing with childhood trauma by traumatizing her children, right? The way she dealt with her trauma, she passed her trauma on to her daughter and then onto her granddaughter. So it's like this generational trauma story. That's interesting.
It's like Sarah Connor with John Connor. They transfer this trauma and this thing down, but I'm a massive fan of turning the tables on. What I love about this reimagining of Mike Myers and Halloween is you have this unmovable force of evil that you feel helpless against. That is, you can't kill it, you can't do anything like that. But somebody taking their power back and flipping it around back on them, so she basically creates this murder house that just kicks Jason's ass or Mike Myers' ass. I love that shit. I love it when Arnold Schwarzenegger gets pissed off at the Predator and creates these booby traps and starts taking agency back and starts fighting back. I love it when in Nightmare on Elm Street when she learns about all those booby traps and starts fighting back.
When she pulls him out of the dream and forces him to fight.
Yes, it pulls him out of the dream and then has him. I love that shit because you have this guy that's tormenting all these people. And he's in this place, but she figures it out and pulls him in the dream, creates all these booby traps, and she's getting this revenge. It's such a beautiful thing.
So one of the worst Jason movies has one of the best beginnings. And I don't remember what the title of this particular Jason film was, but it was the one where it starts out as the most stereotypical Jason film where there's like the hot girl and she's taking a shower and she's like naked in the shower and he's sneaking up the stairs with a knife. It's very stereotypical. Then he gets in there and as soon as he yanks the curtain open, all these floodlights hit him in the face and she takes off. No, that happens later. She takes off running and he chases her. Right. And she's running through the woods and she's kicking ass. She's like flying through the woods and he's running after her and she runs into this clearing. And when he runs into the clearing, all these like big floodlights hit him in the face and like a Army Ranger team steps out with like M60s and M60. They got like vehicle mounted like 50 cal machine guns and they just fucking light him up. They're just like blowing him apart, rip him to shreds. Right. Yeah. They rip him to shreds and take him out. Now, the rest of the movie is fucking stupid. Everything after that is stupid, but that beginning was awesome.
I want to see that right now. I wish we could like watch these like scenes while we're doing this thing. If like Joseph Poole, we could watch the scene. What happens when he goes to hell?
Well, it gets really stupid. Then it creates this new mythology where like the thing that makes Jason isn't him. It's like this like supernatural worm that lives in his heart. And that worm can transfer to somebody else's heart, and then it turns them. The mythology got incredibly stupid from that point on.
Because then it's like,
what? But the beginning.
Let's see this.
Okay. Wait, see, she's like super fast.
Yeah,
and
she's like totally. Yeah.
It's because she's probably like an Army Ranger.
Right. They probably. So this is cool that they're aware of Jason and they do this thing where they set it up.
Yeah. Then he shows up and boom, they hit him with the lights. And he's like, what?
Oh, I love this.
And then it's like, boom, motherfucker.
Boom, 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 boom.
Then now it's like Delta Force shows up and just lights him up.
That's so badass. But now here's the thing. Can he die?
Well, so that's the thing is
he's coming out of the trees and with drop lines.
I mean, in the traditional Friday the 13th, Jason can't die. He always comes back.
Right.
In this, they got the stupid thing with the worm that lives in him that turns other people into Jason, which was terrible. But I loved this beginning where they just fucking light him up.
I love this idea. I think we could. Oh, and then they blow the fire. Yeah, see, I love this idea. This is great. This is what I love in scary movies, is when they turn the tides. Nightmare on Elm Street was a perfect example. That's why I love that movie.
Yeah.
And I think with a thing like Mike Myers, you don't really need the backstory, whereas Nightmare on Elm Street is enriched by the backstory. So sometimes something like Mike Myers, it just needs to be this mysterious force that is representing something bigger than what it is. Yep. So look, Poltergeist is, I'm going to put that at number 3. Because I think that's like that movie has a special place in my heart. I love Poltergeist.
I mean, Poltergeist is Steven Spielberg doing horror back when Steven Spielberg was allowed to do horror. Like nobody would expect horror from him now.
Now, I've heard rumors that, like, is it open that he directed this movie, because I heard that, I know he was a producer on it, but I heard like he was extremely hands-on, and some people say that he really directed the movie.
That's probably more true than not true, in that I'm sure he was very involved, which I think is super unfair to the actual director, which was Tobe Hooper, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's super unfair to Tobe Hooper. But if you're Tobe Hooper and Steven Spielberg is producing your movie, it's not like you can tell him to fuck off.
And you're gonna do what he says, because he knows,
do what he says.
That guy knows how to tell a story.
And Spielberg probably had a lot of input into how the movie was cut and all that stuff.
What Poltergeist does really well, and you and I have talked about on the show before, and I love it so much, is when they create, first I talked about how much I love small towns as a setting, but they create this really cool town and this little family, this neighborhood. The guy's riding his bike, carrying the Coors Lights. It has the 80s like harmony music, and he's riding through the streets, and the kids on their they take out the remote control car, and they go, and the guy drops the beer, and they get in, they finally make it, and they're watching the game, and coach is there, and they pop the beers, and they have a good time, and you see this beautiful family. And then once you create that world of light and family, and then you start doing some crazy shit, you care so much more. It's so much more terrifying.
Yeah. That movie takes its time getting to the horror, because not only does it set the family up, but it also starts out when the supernatural shit happens, it's not scary. And they don't treat it like it's scary. And we've talked about this before, that like they figure out the spot on the floor where things slide.
Right.
And they're like putting their kid on the floor and let their kid slide across the floor. Like,
with
hey,
the
isn't
football
this
helmet.
fun?
Yeah.
It's still playing like a happy Spielberg movie. It's still playing like, look, it's all golden light outside and the family's having a great time. And now we have a friendly ghost, right? That's how it's playing.
Yeah, they lull you into it. You basically have a fun and games moment with these ghosts, where they're doing all these like cool things. And then when shit starts getting creepy, shit gets creepy. Because now you're like, oh, wait, these aren't just fun ghosts that will spray, And also there's an element of mystery to it. In the beginning, it's like when she turns around and all the furniture is stacked in that way, and she's like, whoa, and then it's a little bit unsettling. So it's like, what the fuck is doing this? How is this? By the way, I read somewhere how they did it. They glued all the furniture together, and it was on cables, and they would raise it up. So when she turned back, anyway, I would like to put Lady in White number 3, but you haven't seen it, so I don't know.
I thought Poltergeist was number 3.
I'm sorry, number 4. Lady in White, number 4.
I don't think I've seen that, which is weird, because it sounds so familiar to me.
I guess The Changeling.
I think The Changeling is one of the best ghost stories ever put on film. Yeah, The Changeling is deeply unsettling.
I'm kind of glad that you don't live next to me, because we would watch all of these movies tonight. I'm in the mood to watch all these movies tonight. All right, what do you think's last on the list? Oh, you like May a lot, right?
I do really like May. That's director's name just flew out of my head. It's Lucky McKee. Yeah, is the director of May. And I think May. I still think May is his best movie.
Was it an American movie?
Yeah, it was.
Okay, so we'll put May as that will conclude our list for the top 5 Halloween movies. I'm sure we forgot some. I'm gonna read a comment. This made me
I'm
laugh.
gonna put in my official protest that Halloween 3 Season of the Witch was not included on the list.
Ty, don't worry. The jingle will be playing in this episode. And now, does Monster Squad actually count as a Halloween movie? I mean, I don't know if it's set during Halloween.
It's got to be set during Halloween.
Okay. It's just set during fall, I guess.
Wait, no, I don't think there's any Halloween in the movie. So this made me laugh. This was a comment. Our time travel episode came out yesterday, and Robert Cavana said Los Angeles it was the time travel episode.
Yeah.
And it says Los Angeles is 3 hours behind New York. So when John McClane went back to that time zone, he technically became a time traveler. Conclusion: Die Hard is the best time travel movie. Okay, and this one says, this is Rennie. I know you guys are wary of spoilers for the upcoming season 6, but could you confirm the rumor that Bruce Willis makes a guest appearance in which he beats up Amos and Bobby while he's barefoot? That was funny. Because technically, Die Hard is one of the great horror movies.
It is a great horror movie.
I mean, there is... Talk about, this is a slasher
but it's
movie.
a Christmas horror movie, not a Halloween horror movie.
That's true. So that's why we can't.
So Die Hard would be on the list with like Krampus and other
Nightmare Before Christmas,
Gremlins. The other
Gremlins.
great Christmas horror movie. Yeah,
I feel like we haven't talked enough about Gremlins on this podcast. And that concludes our list. Thank you so much for listening and supporting, and we really appreciate it, and we're very thankful, and this has been a good time, and we will talk to you soon. Say goodbye, Ty.
Goodbye, Ty.